Hi, and welcome to East Carolina Roots. Well, I am doing an update on a video I did about a week ago or so. I was talking about Laban Morris's parents, and I was explaining how they were not Thomas Morris and Rachel Platt of Burbage, Wiltshire, England. I went into a lot of details about it. You can go back and watch that video. But one thing that I did cover in that video were some of our speculative information about Laban's parents. We have pretty good support for Roland Ledbetter being the father of Laban Morris, and that's with extensive DNA testing. We also had been wondering if a lady who went by whose name was Betsy Morris, she was the daughter of this William Morris, right here, Betsy Elizabeth Betsy Morris. We had wondered if she might possibly be Laban's mother because she married a man named Dennis Henby, and then obviously Roland Ledbetter at some point went through Dobbs County during the Revolutionary War. I explain all of this in the video. I'm not going to go back over all of that history and why we had thought that that might be the case, other than the fact that we know Laban's mother needs to be somebody who would have been at the same in the same place at the same time as his father in order for him to have been conceived. Laban grew up around Craven County. Towards the end of his life, he was over in Chalkwinity, at least by the 1860 census. And so, we had long thought, well, probably his family was somewhere in eastern North Carolina, even if they weren't in Craven County or Beaufort County. Because Roland Ledbetter was our number one pick for who his father might be, it was a matter of figuring out where he was. We knew that Roland Ledbetter was living, he was born in Brunswick County, Virginia. He was living in Wake County. We know he was in Wake County, living there still as late as 1782. We know in 1786 he was buying items from an estate. He appears on the 1790 census in Nash County. We believe John Ledbetter is probably his father. We're not 100% positive about that, but just based on a lot of circumstantial evidence. And John Ledbetter appears to be in Nash County, as well as someone called Holding Ledbetter, who was probably Roland's brother. Um, but again, so he's born in Brunswick County, Virginia, but he's living in Wake County when he gets drafted for service in the American Revolution. Then after his service in that, he eventually gets land over in Nash County, so he's living there. And then later, he goes down to Anson County. But the thing is, we know Laban was born probably sometime around 1781 to maybe as late as 1784, probably not later than that. And we know that Laban was going by the last name Morris as early as 1805 when he married Caroline Kitty Williams. And we know that in 1810, he legally had his name changed to Morris. Again, go back and watch that earlier video because I explain all of that history here. So we know that his legal name was Henby until he actually had it changed in 1810, but we know he was already going by Morris long before he legally had his name changed. So we've been long looking for a mother that has some connection to Morris and Henby because it needs to be both. Either he was born Henby because his mother was legally a Henby, or he would have had to have been, or maybe she was married to a Henby, and so he ended up with the Henby name because that would have legally been what he was if he was born into a family where his mother was a Henby by marriage. But we also know somehow or another the Morris name came into the picture, and we do have a lot of DNA support for having Morris relatives, Morris lineage. All right. So we're having to, I think, recalculate this whole thing about Betsy Morris being his possible mother. And the reason is we had thought she might be a good fit, not only because she had the Morris last name as a maiden name, and that she married a Henby, and so it would have been possible for her to be married to Dennis Henby when she had Laban, and then uh, Laban might have been sent off to live somewhere and had his name, he ended up being going by the Morris name, which if that had been her maiden name, that would make sense because then he's just going by his mother's family name. But the thing is, we were counting on the fact that William Morris and Dennis Henby and Betsy Morris were all still in Dobbs County when Roland Ledbetter came through. And even if Dennis Henby was off somewhere, for instance, serving in the Revolution when Roland Ledbetter came through, that would have at least given Betsy an opportunity to meet Roland while he's going through the Dobbs County area on his service, because it does explain in his Revolutionary War service application that one of the counties that they went through was Wayne County. Of course, Wayne County did not exist at that time. It would have been Dobbs County. So we were looking at that possibility. There had been a 1782 early tax list on UNC GenWeb website. And this is for old Dobbs County, which, if you don't know, Dobbs County no longer exists. Dobbs County eventually split off and became Wayne County, Lenore County, and then Glasgow, later Greene County. And so Dobbs County is no more. But this was supposed to be a 1782 early tax list. Um, Now I'm going to jump to this. I posted on the Facebook NC Gen Web group about this. I'm just going to read this email that I sent to archives last week. Hello, I just tried to call but was given this email address instead. I'm wondering where an old Dobbs County tax list might be found that was transcribed well over a decade ago and added to the NC Gen Web. I have posted a question about it on the NC Gen Web Facebook, and Dolores Williams, who manages the page, said it was from a very long time ago and perhaps the late Martha Marble transcribed it and contributed it. Martha, for any of you who don't know, Martha Marble did enormous work transcribing things from old Dobbs County records. She just, the wealth of information that she contributed to the genealogical community just cannot be overstated. She did such a great work. So anyway, the point that I was letting archives know is the catalog that they have on the archives website doesn't have that tax list. And I wanted to know if they could help me find it. So they wrote me back yesterday. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for your email. I apologize for the delay. We have not located a 1782 tax list in the Dobbs County records we have. There are also not Dobbs County tax records in the General Assembly tax records group or the Treasurer and Comptroller tax lists from this time. The only references we have found to a 1782 list are the ones online which refer back to the list on the Dobbs GenWeb, which you have seen. We will continue to search other possibilities and send an update. We are closed for inventory and it will probably be next week before we can complete this. Thank you for your patience. And I did redact the lady's name who kindly responded to my inquiry. So the point is, we have this 1782 early tax list that's supposed to be for Dobbs County. And we had been going by the fact that this does have a William Morris on the list, which I will show you right here. Let me find it. Here we go. William Morris. We have William Morris right here. And I really wanted to actually see this real list because you always want to check your original sources. You always want to be sure. You always want to be sure what you're looking at really exists and that whoever transcribed it in the way that you think is correct, because sometimes there are transcription errors. I'm going to give you an example of that. Another person we have researched, because a lot of Laban's descendants seem to have connections with this man's neighbors, the Holmes in Beaufort County, Chapawinity area, Elisha Morris. We don't have knowledge of us coming directly from Elisha Morris, but boy, he sure does seem like his family might have some sort of connections to some of Laban's people. I've often wondered who his parents are. I've wondered if maybe his sister was Laban's mother. Who knows? We don't know anything about his family. However, we do know that he has a will that he left. And in his will, we have the official real will right here. Well, right here. This is not the official real will. This is images of the official real will. But this is why it's so important to go back to original documents to see what is there, because sometimes it's not the same thing that you find even in other handwritten versions of the document. So this is Elisha Morris's actual will that he wrote and that he signed. And this has his signature, Elisha Morris, and then Edward Buck and Mary Kramer and Adam Muckleroy were witnesses. So in this will, he says his first bequest, "No, this is my will and desire to give my son Josiah Manker 100 acres of land, being on the," and then it goes on to give the description. I have this will transcribed over at East Carolina Roots. It says, "No, this is my will and desire to give my son Josiah Manker 100 acres of land." All right. But somebody in the Beaufort County, I guess, or perhaps archives, I'm not sure which, at some point rewrote this. Now, God bless them, because I cannot imagine having a job where you're going through and rewriting by hand all of the things that were in the old wills. But this is what this person wrote in her transcription, where she rewrote it herself in her own hand. I say her, it might have been a he, forgive me. But it says, because it could have been a man who did it. It says, "No, this is my will and desire to give out Josiah Manker, or to give something Josiah Manker 100 acres of land." It doesn't say give my son. So if you had not seen the actual will that Elisha Morris wrote, you would not know that Josiah Manker was apparently an illegitimate son of his, that he was acknowledging in his will here at the end of his life. Because he plainly says here, will and desire to give my son Josiah Manker. Okay. But this one says will and desire to give wit or out Josiah Manker. It doesn't say anything about my son. And then it says 100 acres of land. Okay. So this is why it's so important to go back and try to find your original sources whenever you can. Get your eyes on them to see what actually is there, so that you make sure you're not getting wrong information. The implication being that if William Morris was no longer in Dobbs County in 1782 and was already over in Anson County, and according to another researcher that I've communicated with on Ancestry, who has researched this William Morris more extensively, he says his records show William Morris was already over in Anson County by 1776, 1777. So he wouldn't have been living still in Anson County when Roland Ledbetter came through. Um, and furthermore, it is possible that William Morris or his daughter Betsy could have gone back to Dobbs County, or they could have gone to some other county in eastern North Carolina, because the Battle of Camden happened around 1780, I think, or 1781. Forgive me for not remembering the exact date. I should have it in front of me. But that would have been something that would have been a very disruptive event there in the region where Anson County was. That was there on the South Carolina border territory. Where they lived was about 50 miles from where the Battle of Camden happened. So I can see how, if they felt threatened, they might would have wanted to go north and up into the coastal area up there around maybe Craven County, Beaufort County, Pitt County, if they had any family in that area, because they might have thought, well, we want to get out of this hot spot where all this battling is happening. And there might have been more loyalists in that South Carolina border territory. So there's a lot of reasons why they might have gone away from there and gone to the rest of Eastern North Carolina. We just don't know. So I can't count on that 1782 tax list anymore placing William Morris and his family in in Dobbs County at that time. Even previously, I did have something in his timeline saying that we don't know that it's the same William Morris, but we at least had an idea that it might be. But now that we know that he definitely had left by 1776, 1777, and I don't have evidence of that 1782 tax list from the official anything from archives or anywhere else, we just got to keep looking. It might be that it was Betsy Morris, because it does fit really nicely if she was married to Dennis Henby when she had Laban. So Laban would have had that name, and then they maybe sent him away. That would fit really nicely, but she might not be his mother, and we're not trying to give him a mother that was not his mother. We're not trying to give a woman, Laban Morris, as an illegitimate son if he's not her son. We have other Hindi women we have actually checked DNA for. Anybody who's researched Craven, Pitt counties, and those areas, um, they've probably seen Keziah Henby, who was married to Abraham Joyner. They've probably seen Elizabeth Victoria Henby, who was listed as the wife of, I think, Gilead Thigpen. I found another earlier Henby woman named Ruth Henby, who comes up, if I remember correctly, in the late 1750s with a bastardy bond, but that's way too early. Laban would have been not born until around between 1781, 1784. Uh, it doesn't necessarily We don't have a specific reason to think that Keziah Henby or Elizabeth Victoria Henby would have been his mother. It's just that those are some people we have looked at as possibilities because of that when they were probably born and their ages and where they lived. But we don't have any reason to think that Roland Morris would have been anywhere near Roland Ledbetter would have been anywhere near where they were. So you see how this gets to be messy. And it's entirely possible that his mother is a woman who we will never find records for. She could have passed away when she had him. I mean, there's just so many different things. But the whole purpose of this video is to say we do have a mystery on our hands with this 1782 early tax list. We don't know anything about where this can be found. If any of you know anything about this, if you've seen this list anywhere, like the real list, the actual handwritten list that would have been from 1782, please, please comment below. I would love to see it. If you have any ideas about what this might have actually been, please leave that in the comments below because that would also be helpful. But I didn't want to not mention this and not follow up with the fact that I have now taken Betsy Morris off of Laban as a potential mother, and I have this totally blank right now. Um, I have tested some different women as theories, and I have a lot of DNA results come up for each of them. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything because of the fact that some of them also have a lot of other families that overlap with cousins. And so we could be matching because of those collateral lines. Hopefully, this wasn't too confusing. Hopefully, you got something out of it and you found this useful. I would love to see any comments that you might have. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe because I do hope to be posting here more regularly in 2025. Maybe not weekly or anything, but I do hope to be posting here more regularly. So, all right. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.